You're listening to KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas, the voice of the people, voted best radio station for music 2 years in a row by the Dallas Observer.
Did you know that KNON podcasts all of its local talk shows? KNON has local talk, each show covering your community in its own unique way. So if you missed one of our great morning talk shows, you can go back and listen to it online. We keep the shows for 2 months so you can hear everything you have been missing out on. Visit KNON.org for more information about the KNON Morning Talk Shows podcast. Also available on iTunes.
What a game! What a game!
Get off my lawn.
Jim Schutze here with Get Off My Lawn, the weekly show on KNON Community Radio where we normally talk about kind of Dallas City Hall stuff, and I have some of that in mind that I want to get to. I think it would be weird to have a session like this with you and not start this morning. However, before I get to local stuff, inviting you to call up and share your opinions and open your hearts about Newtown, Connecticut. I think that's just at the top of all of our minds. I'm at 972-647-1893. It's Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn, the KNON edition of the feature that I write every weekday on the Dallas Observer webpage. Again, I'm at 972-647-1893. And as I said, we're going to get to some local issues later in the show, but I just think most of us are thinking about Newtown right now. The first thing we have in our hearts is unspeakable grief for what happened there, and horror and shock. I happened to go to North Park last night, do some shopping with my wife, and walked in, and I saw a Dallas police officer there by the door, and then I walked about another, 100 yards, and I saw another Dallas police officer. Then I saw another one, and finally the little bell went off in my head, and I thought, oh, this is increased presence. And why do we need increased presence here in Dallas, Texas, the other side of the continent from what happened? This guy in Connecticut was a one-off, and do we really think that we're in danger here? And then I thought, well, wait a minute. I do feel a little uneasy in public spaces because we don't know where it happens next. And the bottom line is we're not safe from it anywhere, are we? Because it can happen anywhere. I think that all of us have a tendency to go sort of logically from those feelings to the next set of questions, the first of which is about gun control. And I happen to think that gun control is a complicated issue. I absolutely feel, I think our president stated what the nation feels, is that we have to do something. We simply cannot be passive before this kind of horror. But then the next question is what? What do we do? And how do we do it? And that's not a simple matter. I see we've got Tony on line 4. Tony, thanks for calling. What's on your mind this morning?
Yes, my heart goes out for the people up in that town and the elementary school. Now, what I'm about to say might get some flack from people, but I'm gonna put it on tape.
Yeah. Okay.
That was like a wealthy community. Mm-hmm. It always has its presence in. We have a safe community. We have people who are, considerate, respectful. Mm-hmm. But I've noticed that the same thing that happened in the black community is not happening to the white community, and now it's like we need questions, we need answers. Why is it happening to us? And to bring it to a racial level is to say it is.
Tony, let me ask you something. Did you hear the president speak yesterday?
Yes, I did.
Did you notice that because I noticed it, that when he was talking about these incidents, he listed a bunch of them, but he also said street corner in Chicago, and I think he was making a point not unlike what you may be saying, that we have a very divided focus on this stuff. These tragedies take place every day on a street corner in Chicago, a street corner in Detroit, and they don't get the same focus as when they happen in Newtown, Connecticut. I mean,
and that's my point, is to say that when they have a Columbine, it was middle class.
right.
Okay, but we kind of say, okay, that's middle class, and they're separate from us. And my point is this: we only concerned when it comes to our neighborhood, but
Sure.
when it's other people. And my whole point is, I hope Americans rally around this and say, we do need gun laws where terrorists cannot get guns here. I'm talking about actual terrorists, people on the terror list can get guns in the United States. Mm-hmm. That should be something the NRA should be able to make an argument and say, hey, yes, we're for gun rights, but we're not going to allow terrorists to be able to get guns legally.
But Tony, let me ask you something else. I don't know how much you know about Southern Dallas, but I've talked to kids in Southern Dallas who don't seem like terrible kids, but they've got a gun in that waistband, and they've got it because they're scared to death, and they have no faith that anybody else is going to come protect them. I'm not making an excuse for every kid who's got a gun. I mean, I know that there are a world of thugs out there who have guns for horrible reasons, but there are also people who have guns because they do not believe that society or the police is going to save their lives, and that they got to have that gun to do it for themselves. Do you think that's true?
I think part of that's true, and I know Southern Dallas. I'm from there.
Okay.
And the reality is that some people who need guns protect, like the one lady who died because her husband killed her, she probably would have got the gun if she knew her husband was going to kill her. The one that the 911 call did not go through.
Oh, yeah.
She probably would have got his gun just to protect herself in that same instance that you talked about.
Sure.
And then my last point I will make is this. When they passed the right to work, the gun laws here in Texas, they sold it as, okay, universities, you can have it on university campus.
Right.
But you know what, they sold it with a white face. But if I'm a black person who never broke the law, can get a permit, I've never had a felon. If I went to UT with braids on my head and baggy pants, they would have never sold that gun law to the citizens of Texas because the image of violence is black.
Yeah.
Whereas they sold, okay, if you have a Virginia Tech shooting, you can defend yourself and save people. And my one question to lawmakers is this: what if I'm black and I put my gun out and my other classmate is white and he shoots me because he think I'm the culprit? And and my thing is this: we always run behind these fears, and like I said, the one thing America should always do is protect Americans, no matter what city code or zip code you're in, and say we're all the same. But what happens is classism and money separate us. One of the reasons why I called when you said North Park, the reality is this: North Park, Highland Park feel like it never happened to them. But the reality is that shooting yesterday said, yes, you are just acceptable as South Dallas is.
Well, and part of a lot of what the people in Newtown, Connecticut are saying is, this is a safe place. We moved here to be safe, and in that idea is the belief that you can move somewhere to be safe, that you can separate yourself geographically from danger. And what these incidents say is that you can't. I mean, danger doesn't work that way. Danger isn't rational. Danger doesn't look at the map and say, oh, well, I got to stay in the danger area. That's just not the reality. And Tony, I thank you for calling. These are
thank you.
Very, very significant points. They remind me of a thing I knew. I had a friend years ago when I was a reporter in Detroit, and he was involved in training a special emergency response police squad. It's kind of like a SWAT team, but a little different, and they were the patrol that needed to be ready to fly to an incident like this. Anyway, he one day I met him for a drink, and he was really, really down, and he said they'd had a deal that day where they got a call from a store owner in Grosse Pointe, which is a wealthy, like the Park Cities, the Gold Coast part of town. And no, actually, it was a call from somebody across the street from the store, and said the store owner's over there struggling with a gunman. So they mobilized and they flew to the scene, and sure enough, there was a fight was still going on, and there was a gun, and they were able to get a shot off, and they shot the guy with the gun. The guy with the gun was black, and the other guy he was fighting with was white. So the end of the story is the black guy with the gun was the store owner, and the white guy was the assailant. And the squad that this happened with was mixed black and white. But they all got there, and they saw this fight. It's a white area. It's an all-white area. And they assumed, okay, the black guy's the bad guy, and they shot him. And they were wrong. They shot the wrong guy. Tony, our caller, was talking about the face of violence. That's a very powerful element of this whole debate. So is the idea that you can move away from the face of violence. So is the idea that the violence is more important and more painful and more significant when it, you know, it happens in Newtown. I don't think, and I didn't get the feeling Tony would have said that that's an expression of straight-up racism. That's an expression of surprise, anomaly. Something is more shocking when you don't expect it. The difference about the shootings on the street corners in Chicago and the gang stuff here is that you do expect it. And so it is less newsworthy, which leads me into another aspect of this I wanted to bring up. Call me up if you have feelings about this. I'm at 972-647-1893. It's Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn, 972-647-1893. The other thing that I noticed, because I've spent my life in the news business, is the way these things are reported by us in the news business. One of the last things I saw before I left the house was this heartrending TV interview with a little girl who was describing what happened in painful detail, kind of halting little kid language. I used to be better at guessing kids' ages when I had a little kid of my own. He's grown up now, and you lose the the scale. But I would say this child was 7 or 8 maybe, and she was talking about what happened in the school in Newtown, and it was terrible. And you thought, how awful for this child to have to recount all of this to a camera. Then they pull back on the frame, and you see that her mother is sitting right there. In fact, the kid's kind of sitting almost in her mother's lap telling the story. So obviously the mother was consenting to this interview. And it reminded me of something. I used to be a street reporter, and I spent lots of time on this very kind of story and searching around trying to get people to talk. I think in the news business we rationalize what we do a lot, and the fact is that news organizations, I don't know, there's kind of like primitive hunter-gatherer societies, and the reporters are the hunters. And their job is to go out and get meat and bring it back to the village. And if you can't kill a bear, kill some porcupines. But come back with something. Come back with interviews. Come back with stories. Come back with information. That can be a very ruthless process. But here's my point that came back to me when I was watching this interview with the child in Newtown, sitting almost in her mother's lap. People want to tell what happened. This is what happened is a terrible burden, and part of the way we unburden ourselves of this is by telling what happened. Telling what happened is not, you know, it's not simply a a violation of privacy. It's also a kind of therapy. People, it's an instinct. We want other people to know what happened. We want to share what happened. We want to, if somebody's in the middle of something like this, the victim of it, they want to know, they want you to know what happened, and they want to know what you think about it. There's a sharing here that is instinctual, and it's important. And as I said, look, I know we in the news business can use reasoning like that to rationalize some pretty terrible behavior, and I don't mean to do that, but I do think that process of getting in there and talking to people and giving them a venue in which they can share what happened is very important, socially and morally. If you disagree, or if you agree, of course, call me up, 972-647-1893. It's Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. We talk usually about local political issues, and I'm going to get to that later, but I just thought it was crazy on a day like this not to open up with some mention of Newtown. The other, I mean, as the caller earlier, Tony, suggested, the other connection that people make immediately when they get over the horrible grief and shock is gun control. And I think the first impulse that a lot of people have is to say, just get rid of them. Get rid of all the guns so this can't happen again. However, when you start talking and thinking, the conversation is actually more complicated than that. Who gets rid of what guns? And how is it done? You cannot wave a wand and make all guns go away. Should you make all guns go away? There's a lot of another thing Tony brought up is that you get people talking about this, and there's a lot of weird feeling that's behind the scenes in gun control conversations, that it takes a long time to get it out on the table. Some of which is a lot of people wind up saying, well, we only want the good guys to have guns. That would be us. And we don't want those bad guys to have guns. That would be them. So, you know, people say, and who's them, who's us? People have a tendency to divide society up into white hats and black hats, or sometimes white faces and black faces. And that influences their feeling on this issue. It's a harder thing to get into than we think. It's not as simplistic. We'll come back to this a bit in the next session. This is Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. That's that sad music that means I have to go away for a minute, and I know how terrible you feel about it, but I promise you I'll be right back. Bye.
If it's time to get rid of your old gas guzzler, the KNON Vehicle Donation Program can help. There is still a market for those old vehicles, and if you donate it, you are helping to support the quality programming here on KNON. Just call 877-KNON-AUTO or go online to knon.org. We'll take care of everything from pickup to tax paperwork. That's 877-KNON-AUTO.
Howdy, y'all. This is Johnny Baker Jr. from Oak Cliff, Texas. The only type of Blue Monday I can stand is if Fats Domino is playing the piano. To fix this, start your week right. Listen to the Magic Time Warp Show with Ranger Rita, Action Annie, and Rockin' Robin. Soothe your Monday morning groove from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on KNON 89.3. We are the voice of the people.
Conspiracy is a horn ringing.
Jim Schutze back with Get Off My Lawn. We've been we're supposed to talk about local stuff here, local political issues, and we will, but we started out with Newtown, Connecticut this morning because we figured that that's got to be on everybody's mind. Hanging during the break was the caller, Robert. Excuse me. Robert, are you still there?
Good morning, Jim, and good morning to your listening audience.
Good morning.
Well, I wish I could talk about both, politics and about the shooting, but I think that it's saddening to just to see all this on the news and how someone will go in there and kill these little kids. It just don't make no sense. And it's kind of looking like this is what some parts of our society and people are coming to. You look at the everyday violence in the inner cities of America. I mean, this is daily that people are being shot and killed behind drugs and crime and hopelessness and, that economic embargo that affects, the inner cities of America. And I was surprised to hear the president state that, hey, we're going to have to deal with the shootings in the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's the first thing that came to my mind, and I think that blacks in America and in the inner city has to understand that, these guns is placed in our community like these Uzis and all these assault weapons and stuff like that, and really it's destroying lives. And, because years ago, if we had a disagreement, when I was growing up, you had a fight.
Yeah.
Now, you got a gun, you get killed,
Right.
about whatever the disagreement was about.
Right.
And I was talking to one of my friends, and he's kind of, I have all kinds of friends, and this guy was white, and he was kind of, racist, but, he was, we deal
Nobody's
with
perfect.
reality, and he was saying to me, he said that the Ku Klux Klan don't have to march and do the things that they used to do against black people in America. What they are able to do is make sure that black people get guns where they could kill themselves. And it made a lot of sense because we're not going in. They're not selling these assault rifles to us. But what I'd like to see them do is every gun that's confiscated, find out where it comes from. And if you continue to see where these guns are coming from, you will see who's planting these guns in the inner cities of America that's destroying so many lives, because they're killing children. I mean, they're coming in there shooting, and bullets is ricocheting and killing kids. And if you add up the amount of young kids in the inner cities of America that's been killed by a bullet that ricocheted from some clown that's shooting at somebody else about nothing.
Well, Robert, let me ask you a question. Let's say that the Ku Klux Klan is bringing those guns in. Let's say that somebody like the Ku Klux Klan is bringing in the drugs, and they're doing it as a way to kill off black people. In life, and I know that you think about these things because you're the author of a very famous document that deals with this. When you go down the road of life, isn't there always somebody sitting on the corner tempting you with something?
Right.
And don't you have to say no?
That's right. Because we don't bring drugs into America, but we distribute them to each other in our community. But when you get deep into the economics, how do I pay my rent?
Yeah.
Some young people then dropped out of school, which is the wrong choice, and they made that mistake, and it's consequences when you can't go get a job. So, But even though this guy can't go get a job and he's not qualified, and he put himself in that position, he still wants to be as successful as we are, Jim.
Sure.
He still wants a nice car, a nice home. So what does he do? Somebody come there and say, hey, you might be broke and you don't have no money, but now I could front you these drugs and you could sell these drugs, and the profits you could take, and then you could pay your rent, buy your car, and then you could get up. Now,
well, Robert, this actually does bring us around to a local politics topic. Do you know the Reverend Eddie Lane at Bible Way Bible Church? It's on West Ann Arbor. Anyway, I talked to him. He's on the faculty at Dallas Theological Seminary, and he's been in his church for 47 years. It's in a very tough neighborhood. I talked to him at the end of this week about young people in southern Dallas. He was saying that a lot of these kids are the children of parents who worked, who had jobs. But the kids, he said, and he's worked with them for 47 years, he said that a lot of the kids are functionally illiterate. They're dumped out of the school system. They leave the school system unable to read or write.
Right.
They wind up in prison early, he said, by 18. He said they come out bound and determined never to go back. I learned my lesson. I never want to have that happen again. And he said what they discover is that they are absolutely unemployable. Now they're illiterate and they're ex-cons. Right, and there's nothing they can do. And he said pretty soon they're back. They're back. And I asked him, I said, in all those decades, you've dealt with thousands of young people who've been in this position. How many of them have found a way to turn it around and have a life? And he paused and he thought for a long time, and he said, very few.
That's true. That's true. Very true.
The reason I was talking to him, you won't believe this, but it goes to the golf course. I listened to City Council person Tanell Atkins last week when they were debating whether or not to put money into this golf course. And he said, please, he said, this is like my birthday. This is a birthday party for me. Don't rain on my birthday. I want to see this golf course happen. And for listeners, we're talking about a golf course that's on city-owned land. The city is pursuing a deal on. It'll be a private golf course. It'll cost $150,000 to $200,000 to join. It's being developed by a major corporation, probably for their executives, I would think. And the idea is but this golf course is surrounded by very, very poor census tracts. I looked at the census tracts. In a lot of those census tracts around that part of the city, half of the people are what's called not in the labor force. They're not counted as unemployed. You're only counted as unemployed if you used to have a job and you lost it. These are people who've never had a job. Half of the population. So it's a very, very poor area. And the reason I wound up talking to Reverend Lane was this. To me, it seems stupid to think that a golf course for a bunch of rich guys is going to change that. But he said, no. He said, this part of the city is invisible. These thousands of young people are simply being fed into the meat grinder, and nobody even sees it or knows it. He said the golf course will cause people to see us, to know we're here.
How?
I don't know. Robert. I don't.
Yeah, and see, this is what we have leadership that should know that our community need economic development. Like right now, Jim, you have whites that's been employed for many, many years and have lived a good life, and some of them had boats and kids at college, and when they lost their job, now they're with no income, and some of them is setting their cars on fire, burning their houses up, the equity out of it, where not having a job changed their whole lifestyle. And see, but when you look at a community like South Dallas, West Dallas, these communities been oppressed for years, where no jobs, no development, very few opportunities. How do you be successful in this type of environment? I was reading just the other day that West Dallas is the 11th poorest community in America. Now, the city of Dallas built a $186 million bridge in front of this community and have not put a dime in this community for economic development.
Well, the other thing is this: Mayor Rawlings was on National Public Radio last week. The Brookings Institution, which studies these things nationally, has announced that Dallas is one of 3 cities in the nation that have left the recession, and Dallas is the biggest one. And the mayor was talking about how Dallas is the biggest, best job hiring, job creating, people needing place in the country right now. And it sounded great. But I'm spending the week looking at these numbers for a huge segment of the city where half of the people have never had a formal job, ever. And they ain't getting one.
And these jobs that he's talking about is not in the inner cities.
Right.
These jobs are outside of the, like every time I get on, you get on 30, 35 or 45, you see all these people leaving their community, going to other communities for employment.
Well, now, what do you think of this? I talked to also last week the Reverend Gerald Britt, who's a vice president of City Square, which used to be called Central Dallas Ministries. And Reverend Britt often writes op-ed pieces on the morning news. He's certainly one of the most thoughtful observers of the city, and he's a man who knows Southern Dallas well. And we were talking about what happens if you put an employment center into Southern Dallas. He said he thinks a lot of the people we're talking about won't even apply for those jobs because they don't believe they'll be hired and they don't see themselves as part of that situation. And of course, if you go back to Reverend Lane, and you realize that you're talking about people who are illiterate and who have never worked and who've been in and out of prison, no, they're not going to get those jobs. Somebody from Garland's going to get those jobs.
Right. But see, we have to start somewhere, dear.
Sure.
And we got to, my advice to the churches and community leaders that we got to start with the children.
Mm-hmm.
See, if I tell you what, if you went to the best family in Holland Park, and you went and got their little 8-year-old kid, and then let's make him a boy.
Yeah.
And you brought him to South Dallas, and you put him in Dixon Circle,
right,
and let him grow up in Dixon Circle. And then you go to Dixon Circle, and you find a little 8-year-old black kid in Dixon Circle, and you take him to Holland Park, and you tell him in Holland Park, raise this little 8-year-old black boy from Dixon Circle. And then you go back 5 years later, and when these little kids are 13 years old, and you compare. See, and you could see the difference. And this little kid in Holland Park is going to be more educated. He's going to be more knowledgeable, But the little kid in Dixon Circle, the little white kid, when you go to him and you see him, he's going to be just like the other little kids in the community.
What's tough for me as a lifelong liberal is that politically, the person I've seen in Texas politics who went hardest after the very thing you're talking about, which is the children. These kids don't get to decide into what conditions they are born.
Right.
And the person who went after this the hardest was George W. Bush when he was governor. And his education reforms, what they were really arguing from, which was a lot of scientific research, which showed that you can take that kid in Dixon Circle. You can let him be born there. You can let his mother and father be whatever. But you can save that kid because you can teach him to read and write just as well as the little rich kid, the white kid in the Park Cities, if you want to do it, if you're determined to do it, if you believe it can be done. And the pushback against them, and we've all, there's this great worship of Ann Richards when she was governor. A lot of people love her. She's a great character. Liberals like me love her and so on. But Ann Richards was the pushback because she was defending the teachers' union. And somehow the teachers' union got to be more important than those children. Robert,
But Jim, we have churches in our community. We have community leaders, and we could make the difference with this little kid not leaving Dixon Circle, but we have to get involved in these kids' lives.
Yes.
it's because I mean we're the ones that's sinking in the ship.
Well, and that's what Reverend Lane said. It can be done. You can have a center.
Jim, I took about 30 kids from around my office. I took them to my ranch every Saturday and Sunday for a few years, and I changed most of those kids. Now, we lost probably about a fourth of them to crime and drugs because I mean, when I brought them back home, some of them lived in the crack house.
Sure.
When the community they lived in was violent and drugs and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But they were able to understand that, hey, this is not the life that I want to live.
And isn't it amazing that you can turn around a kid, any kid,
right,
against those odds?
I mean, we did it, so I know that it could be done. See, there's no question that it could be done, but you got to reach out and help these kids. And this is what I'm saying, and this is not just, I'm not just pounding on the church. But opening them doors just on prayer meeting on Thursdays and church on Sunday. I mean, you got the air conditioning and heating on, 7 days a week in most cases. Get those little kids out of the community and bring them into church and get some of these church members to come in there and teach them how to read, teach them how to write.
Yeah.
Teach them something. Teach them how to live a better life. And that's what it is. And that's the difference. When I grew up, we were poor, but we had opportunities, and the community was involved in our lives.
Well,
and the community, we didn't have drugs and we didn't have crime. But the black community now is infested with drugs and crime. And a young kid that's born and want to do right and want to be successful and want to get to that green side of the life guide map. It's difficult.
It's very difficult. And Robert, you speak not just with passion about this, but hands-on experience. You know what you're talking about. I appreciate very much your calling and sharing it. And what you have to say does show that these issues are not just it's not just Newtown, Connecticut. It's all of us. Thanks very much for calling in. We sort of got segued from Newtown into the golf course, which may seem like a stretch, but it isn't really. We have this. What is the overarching issue? It's an issue of terrible, rending violence, where we think we know what world we live in, and then we wake up to something like this, and we think, man, we've got one foot in hell, don't we? Anyway, we'll see you after this break for the last section of Get Off My Lawn.
Texas, a program of the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, is committed to helping Texas citizens connect with the services they need. Whether by phone or internet, our goal is to present accurate, well-organized, and easy-to-find information from over 60,000 state and local health and human services programs. We have programs ranging from child care to GED instruction, from dental care to food pantries to public utility services. Contact 211 at 211texas.org or dial 211 to connect with the resources you need. If dialing 211 directly doesn't work on your telephone, you can call 877-541-7905 for 211 Texas. Don't let your family go without the help they need.
Don't be a Scrooge. Give the blues to the music lover on your list.
KNON has the perfect CD or LP for you. Texas Blues Radio, Volume 5.
Texas Blues Radio, Volume 5 features acoustic blues, instrumental blues, party songs, somebody done somebody wrong songs.
Baby Got a Good Thing songs, six-pack and devilback songs.
Gumbo, jive, T-bone, and hip-shaking songs from a fine selection of great Texas blues artists.
So do right by the blues and give some Texas blues this year.
Texas Blues Radio, Volume 5 CD is available at KNON.org, Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Record Town in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records and Rewind Music.
Download a copy at cdbaby.com.
The LP is only available at Forever Young Records.
All proceeds are a gift to KNON.
If you enjoy listening to KNON, why not join us as part of the KNON Community Advisory Board? This is a great opportunity to offer your voice to the voice of the people. Our Community Advisory Board provides comments and suggestions to KNON's Board of Directors about KNON programming decisions, community service, and policies.
The role of the Community Advisory Board is solely advisory. This board meets 4 times a year on the second Tuesday of January, April, July, and October. The next meeting is January 8th, 2013 at KNON. Meetings are open to the public. If you're interested, please go to knon.org and scroll down through our events or call 214-237-3003 for more information. Deadline for applications is Monday, December 17th.
Hey, babes, take one.
Jim Schutze back with Get Off My Lawn. We've been talking a little bit, as we usually do, about local Dallas things, but also about Newtown, Connecticut. And during this break, we've had Oscar hanging patiently on the line. Oscar, are you still there? Maybe not. Oscar? Well, we lost you. Oscar, try us back. I'm sorry. We made you wait too long. This is Get Off My Lawn. This is the KNON community radio version of a feature that I write every weekday on the webpage of the Dallas Observer. Give us a call at 972-647-1893. It's 972-647-1893. We've spent most of the show this morning talking about Newtown, Connecticut, and we've had some very thought-provoking callers and conversation about how this issue of gun violence reaches us here in Dallas and what it has to say about the world that we live in. It always seems to me there's a piece of the debate that is held close to the vest for some reason. Among those people who are opponents of gun control, I hate to use that term because when you say it's pro-gun control and anti-gun control, it so oversimplifies it. It just ain't that simple. That's like saying people are pro-nice and anti-nice. It's more complicated than that. Pro what gun control, anti what gun control. You have to dig into the issue. It's just not simple. But if you look at the National Rifle Association and Wayne LaPierre and who's their executive director and the pronouncements he makes, there's an agenda against gun control that is really expressing a skepticism and fear of the organized state itself. It's a belief that we cannot trust government, any government. And think about, what does that mean? Any government. Maybe you don't trust some guy who's in government now, but what do you mean when you say you don't trust any government? So what do you trust? I mean, if you don't trust any government, then I think you don't trust civilization. People will try to break it down in ways that I think that are pretty simplistic, and I don't think they're even honest, and they'll say, oh, well, I trust county sheriffs or something. Man, whoever says that hasn't I've been a local news reporter all my life. They haven't dealt with enough sheriffs. You might trust one sheriff, but wait until you see the next one. There's a reason why we have an organized society, and the bone structure of that society is called the rule of law, and the rule of law is expressed through government. And if you set yourself against government, you are setting yourself against civilization. And you're kind of saying, we're just all going to get guns and we're going to settle this stuff by shooting at each other. I guess, people probably know that that's an absurd position and they don't want to get stuck in that position, and so they dial back on it. And they talk about how they'll take the guns away from the criminals, and then they'll take the guns away from us, and then they will come to get us, and we won't have any guns to resist them. Well, Who's they? Who are we talking about? If you don't believe in any government, if you don't believe in the rule of law, then you need to say that. You need to say, no, I think we got to go back to medieval times, and everybody's got his prepper cave and his weapons, and we all need to just defend ourselves. Sometimes that feeling is all tied up in all the other poisons we have going in the society. I mean, clearly, as some of the callers indicated early in the show, it gets tied up with race and other kinds of paranoia. But don't we still have to figure it out? Don't we still have to get into it and decide what to do? And are there no pragmatic steps that we can take to protect ourselves? What is this? If there's a pattern in this stuff we're seeing now in Connecticut and Colorado and elsewhere, I think the pattern is young males who go nuts. Is there no way that we can protect ourselves against that? Anyway, I got Michael on line 4. Michael, how are you this morning?
Hey, how are you?
Good. What's up, Michael? What do you got on your mind?
Oh, nothing much. I just think that there are those who don't follow either path. We trust people. To answer your question, who do we trust?
Right.
We trust other people. Other people may be the extreme from one extreme to the other. Mm-hmm. And that's my answer to the question of who do we trust is other humans. And we neither believe in using violence.
Michael, let me ask you something. Have you got your radio on?
Yeah.
Could you turn it down just a little?
Sure.
We're getting... Well, okay, we trust other people. Go and what other people?
all other people. And if the person turns into a scoundrel, we say bless them and no longer,
Yeah. No, we don't trust him anymore. Well, we don't. I mean, I don't trust all people. I have to confess to you.
But isn't the government under the category of all people?
Yes, the government, you're right, is an expression of the will of the
government,
people.
Those things you are advocating having faith in are components of that whole set, all humans.
Sure. And I trust our government. I trust our government, man, a good 50.0001% of the time, which is more than half. More than half. But then I don't trust it at other times. Yes.
But I just felt that view needed to be expressed.
No, I think you make a good point that if there's some point at which you gotta trust somebody. You know, I had a professor at the University of Michigan who was teaching a constitutional law course, and he said, "What do you think the purpose of the law is?" And I don't know what stupid things we said, but he said...
that's the famous founding of the Student Democratic Society site, right?
Yeah. And he said...
Mr. Tom Hayden.
Yeah, Tom Hayden, and there was another guy, I can't remember his name, but anyway, this professor said we have the law so we can all close both eyes when we go to bed at night. The law is this deal we make with each other. It's a compromise, it's a contract, but we do it so that we can have some faith. You're right, Michael, in some faith in the people around us to do the right thing. That's what the law is all about. And if you give up on that, then fine, you can't go to bed at night.
So my pre-law, I was political science pre-law, and my law degree made faculty advisors.
What?
I expressed doubt in going forward into a law degree. I had some mentoring and didn't feel comfortable with with the compromises of having a totally guilty person released from all blame due to their rights being violated and fruits of the poison vine.
Yeah.
And so I went and talked to my faculty advisors, and these guys gave me a left-handed compliment, sir. They told me that I had what it took to be a lawyer. I didn't have an ounce of compassion. I was a cold-hearted individual, the perfect lawyer. Stick with the pre-law program.
Right.
And I said, well, that's kind of a slap in the face. I'm a country boy. I thought I had all kind of compassion.
Yeah.
I thought that's what I was doing, was coming to Washington like Mr. Smith, you know, and all those other people, and making being a part of a positive change. And I was told by my faculty advisors that just, I needed to get rid of that dream and move forward with being a cold-hearted lawyer like I was born to be. And so I switched to theology, and that didn't work. Switched to psychology, that didn't work. Manipulation is manipulation, whether it's called behavior modification or not. And made it to philosophy, and that quiterated me. So, but anyway, I appreciate your time, friend.
Michael, I appreciate your calling. Thanks very much. These are worthwhile insights.
I'll encourage you to look into the history, if you would, Jim. This is Jim, right?
Yes, yes.
Look into the history of a former professor of philosophy at the University of Dallas in Irving. If you haven't heard of Joseph Stafford, are you aware of that historical event in the Metroplex area?
No. I wonder if you could, email me, jim.schutze at
dallasobserver.com. I don't have any of that technology. I was just lucky enough to be near a phone.
I'm really sorry. I appreciate your calling, and it's very helpful. We gotta move on. And that was Michael, and I hope that he will tell me more about that maybe by letter. We got off into a conversation with Michael about lawyers. I have a little bit different perspective on lawyers than a lot of people. As a reporter, I'm very dependent. I'm dependent on the kindness of lawyers. Can you imagine being in that position? But my take on it, because I talk to lawyers a lot, not so much for stuff about the law. A lot of times it's for perspective on the communities they're in. The lawyers understand, and the profession assumes that people are going to fight with each other. And lawyers provide an arena where people can go fight with each other in the law, in the courthouse. They can go after each other hammer and tongs. They can insult each other. They can accuse each other of dastardly things within the law, because the law understands that people are aggressive and angry and competitive and hostile, and that's all got to come out somewhere. The great gift that the law brings to us, and it brings it to us via lawyers, is that we get to take all of that dark side out within the law. If the problem is, if you take lawyers out of the picture and you divide this world up, then what is the scheme? Then the scheme is white hats versus black hats. Then the scheme is us good guys versus those bad guys, and us good guys need to go get us some more guns. I just think that there's this wrong impression that lawyers go out and encourage us to be naughty. Every lawyer I've ever known has spent most of his time trying to get his client back in the cage. You know, telling the client, no, look, it's really not a good idea for you to go over there and set her house on fire. She is the mother of your children, and you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. Let's settle this in court. people, generally speaking, don't need a lot of encouragement to behave badly. They're headed that way anyway. What they need is a lot of encouragement to come back on the farm and back within the rule of law. We need more than the rule of law. I thought Michael made an excellent point that we need to have some ability somewhere to trust each other and to trust each other to be civilized human beings. We need to be able to close both eyes when we go to bed at night. And the terrible effect of stuff like Newtown, what's happened there, this whole recent series, but look, it's not a recent phenomenon. This is an event stretching back through our history. And the effect of something like this god-awful slaughter of innocent children is that it absolutely destroys our ability to trust each other, and it leaves us under a pall of fear. I felt it last night when I was walking around North Park. It's different. We feel different today because of this. And it seems to be coming at a quicker pace. I think we all try to put the Colorado theater shooting out of our minds. We all try to get back to normal. But before we can ever get there, this comes along. And we need, what effect is it having on us as individuals? What effect is it having on us as a society? And is there anything we can do about it? That was what I saw when I watched the president on television last night. I didn't see him leaping into some big diatribe about specific gun control measures. I saw tears in his eyes, and I think he was expressing what the nation feels, that we don't know what the answer is, but there has to be an answer. We can't simply throw our hands up and say, no, that's it. This is how it's going to be. It can't be like this. We have to be better than that. We have to look around the world, look outside our own society, look at other societies, see who's got this problem, who doesn't. Well, if you want to use the corporate speak term, best practices, we got to figure out what works, whether it's law, whether it's a change in our core morality, whether it's a change in how we operate psychologically within ourselves. Somewhere there has to be an answer, because we simply cannot allow this kind of thing to go on. And these are tough fundamental questions. It doesn't do any good to pretend that we can reduce them to simplistic formulas. It ain't going to work. We have to dive in somehow. And as we've heard on this show, these are issues that come right here, right home, right here in Dallas. They affect each of us exactly as if we lived in that town in Connecticut. So this is Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn, and we'll be back next week and talk maybe a little more about local stuff. Thanks to my callers this morning. It's been an interesting exchange. We'll see you 10 a.m. Saturday. Get Off My Lawn. Jim Schutze next week. Be there, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
You're listening to KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas, the voice of the people, voted best radio station for music 2 years in a row by the Dallas Observer.
Did you know that KNON podcasts all of its local talk shows? KNON has local talk, each show covering your community in its own unique way. So if you missed one of our great morning talk shows, you can go back and listen to it online. We keep the shows for 2 months so you can hear everything you have been missing out on. Visit KNON.org for more information about the KNON Morning Talk Shows podcast, also available on iTunes.